Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Corporate Partnership Building for Nonprofit Fundraising. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us. My name is Hannah Erickson, and I'll be moderating today's session. I'm a librarian with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, also called PGCMLS, and the liaison between the nonprofit Candid, formerly known as the Foundation Center, and PGCMLS. Here with me today to produce today's webinar is my PGCMLS colleague, Shelley O'Brien, who is our Director of Development and Donor Engagement and works with the PGCMLS Foundation. We are pleased to welcome our guest presenter for today, local nonprofit leader, Jacquelyn Didio. Did I say your name right, Jackie?
You got it right. That was awesome.
So I'd like to, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jackie. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Shelley. And it's so lovely to meet all of you. I'm really delighted to have a conversation with everyone today about corporate partnerships, and as I like to say, transformational partnerships. And I really want this to be a conversation, something that we can go back and forth on. So feel free to use the chat whenever you want. And I'll have some things to share out and some opportunities for folks to ask questions and things like that along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to start my little presentation, and I'll kind of go on and off it. But I always like to make things a little bit visual and interactive since I'm a very visual person myself. And again, welcome. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about, I'm going to go through just a little bit about me and then introductions for all of us. Defining terms, transformational partnership building, alignment with equity, and then just dive into questions. And since it's a smaller group of people, like I said, feel free to chat, ask questions along the way. I think that will be a great way to use your time over the next hour. And I wanted to start with just a quote, which is, after the final no, there comes a yes on that, or a yes, and on that, the yes, the future, sorry, after the final no, comes a yes, and on that yes, a future world depends. So remember, just because someone says no, a yes will follow in the future. So that's a part of my encouragement for everyone to continue with partnership building too, because it takes a long time. So a little bit about me. My name's Jacquelyn Didio. You can just call me Jackie. I use the pronoun she, her. And I've partnered with over 150 companies over the time that I've worked in partnership development, event planning, and many other pieces of nonprofit life. Like I said, I've worked in every part of nonprofits, from programming when I first began a few years ago now. So working directly with young people and really sticking with education. I also worked with the homelessness sector as well, but my heart is really with young people and education. I have a love of yoga, so just to tell you a little bit about myself personally. And I also have a belief in businesses' kindness as a model. So I'd love to, I'm happy to share more about that at a later time, but I think it's really important for us to think about how through business and partnerships, we can build kindness with one another. I have over 15 years of fundraising experience, and I absolutely love my job right now. I work at the Child and Family Network Centers based in Alexandria, Virginia, and I'm the executive director there. We work with low-income families to make sure that they can get free preschool. And we have such a beautiful, diverse community of folks speaking over 14 different languages. And we're running in-person programming and have been during all of COVID too. So it's been a challenging year, but a beautiful year, nonetheless, to make sure that we can support families the way that they want to be supported. And as a secondary reminder, I told Shelley and Hannah this, but I'm also pregnant with twins. So you might see me like moving around or making a little scrunchy face, and that might just be from them kicking or something like that. So just as a heads up, you can't see that from the head up, but it is happening. So a little bit more about my organization that I love so much. The Child and Family Network Center, I'll refer to it as CFNC throughout the time with you all today. But we provide caring, high quality, free education and related services to children and families in their own neighborhoods in order to prepare and empower them for success in school and in life. I won't be talking about it too much, but there will be some examples from corporate partnerships that I'll talk about with my work here. But This is one of my favorite pictures of the kiddos masking up. They're just so resilient and amazing, and they bring a smile to my face every day. And so that's enough about me. I would love to just learn more. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment about why are you here today? So I'd love for you all to take a moment and just write in the chat and share what you'd like to learn and take away, your name and your organization. So just take a moment, put that in the chat, and we'll go from there. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see your faces.
And I'll also note, just as a courtesy, we are recording this and we will share this afterwards. I'm actually thinking we may put it on YouTube, on our PGCMLS YouTube channel. So just wanted to let you know.
Great. Well, hi, Jacquelyn. Thank you for saying hello. Leveraging partnerships, awesome. We will definitely be talking through about that. Hey, Amy. And feel free to continue to add anything to the chat. So if there are things that you do definitely want to take away from today, I want to be respectful of your time. So I can always pivot and answer questions. So we'll definitely be talking about leveraging partnerships and these transformational partnerships like we've been talking about. So, oh, hey, Janet, great. The Coalition of 100 Black Women, Prince George's County, looking for partnership to support community programming. Excellent, awesome. We'll talk a little bit about that. Learning strategy and creating new partnerships in COVID in a post-COVID world. Awesome. We'll be talking about that a little bit more too. So I do hope that this will be helpful for everybody. And I think starting the partnership is the hardest part. Can you go over how to seek new partnerships? Absolutely. We'll definitely be talking about that. And I 100% agree. That is definitely the hardest part. And it's the most fun part too sometimes. Great. Well, like I said, if you have any other questions or thoughts throughout the presentation today, feel free to just chat them. And I'll try to take a look at them and make sure I answer it before our time is up. Awesome. So I'm going to talk about transformational partnerships. I'm going to share my screen again too with everybody. And in the back is a picture that I took with my leadership council, which we'll talk about a leadership council later in this program. But, you know, this is a group of people who have really helped me create the partnerships I had at my previous organization, Miriam's Kitchen, and how I think partnerships can really be built from bringing in your closest friends and partners. So just to start with defining terms. So the things I wanted to differentiate between is the two terms of transactional partnerships versus transformational partnerships. I was wondering if someone would actually step up and read what a transactional partner is. So someone can unmute themselves and just go ahead and read that.
Transactional partnerships, one-way partnerships that have only to do with monetary contributions, one-day volunteering, or one-time opportunities. Transformational partnerships, two-way partnerships that build trust, understanding, and multi-year support.
Awesome. Thank you so much for stepping up and doing that. Does anyone else want to give examples of what a transactional partnership might be versus a transformational partnership? I'll go into it more, but I thought I just let folks speak from their own experience. You can unmute yourself if you'd like to give an example or chat. Well, if we don't have any examples here, I can definitely share some with you. So transactional partnerships, like it said here, so they're really one-way partnerships. So let's say an organization, a company calls you and says, hey, we really want to do a volunteer day. We want to bring 100 people to your small organization, and we would like to have, we'd like to redo your, we'd like to paint something, or we'd like to put some new mulch in. And this wasn't ever part of your plan as an organization. This wasn't part of your timeline, but you wanted to steward this relationship. That is a one-way transactional partnership, because they're just coming to you with what they need and you're not getting what you need in return. Another example of this might just be someone giving a monetary contribution on a one-time basis, and then you never, for some reason or another, it falls through the cracks. You don't get to follow through with them. Don't get to build that relationship, and then you never see those dollars again. I don't know about you guys. You can raise your hands if this has happened, but how many times have you received support one time from a company and then never again? Yeah, right. So how do we get from that transaction, so that one-way communication, that ability to just get that one-time donation, one-time volunteer opportunity, to the second piece, which I really believe in, which is this transformational partnership. So transformational partnerships are much more two-way style communications. You build trust and understanding with one another. And you can also come to a place where you build multi-year support, which is the most beautiful thing in the world, as we all know as nonprofit leaders and people who've been in the nonprofit field, right? So that helps us stay relevant. And that takes time, that takes effort. And like someone was saying, that takes strategy too. So we're going to really dive into what kind of strategy you need to be able to build those transformational partnerships, because you can get someone from a transactional partnership to a transformational partnership, but it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes you working on that relationship from the very beginning. Another example of a transactional partnership that turned into a transformational partnership that I've been able to work on. We had at my previous organization, we worked with a defense company, and they used to come in and volunteer at our organization on a fairly regular basis and gave us a small monetary contribution. So the first person working on it decided to start building this relationship up, really just getting to know that main point of contact, getting to understand the values of the company, understanding why they came in every month to volunteer. And then we started having real conversations about, well, this is what we need as an organization. These are our goals. Can we somehow align with each other more and create more systems change work? And what that built to is an increased investment. Started, it was 5 years to do this, but it started at $5,000 and it grew to $100,000 of investment. And that was a 3-year multi-year commitment of $100,000 that grew the next year to $150,000. And that's because we were able to work with their community team and really say, okay, we really align with what you guys believe and what you want to do for the community. We do that. Let's make this happen together. So the next few pieces we're going to talk about is how that process happens, because it can happen. It just, like I said, takes time and effort and relationship building. Does anyone else have any other examples of transactional or transformational partnerships that you all have worked on?
Well, I'll share a quick example. I'm also thinking of times when you don't or you forget to steward the gift. So you just send the thank you letter and then never follow up. Or I think, unfortunately, that happens a lot sometimes. So,
absolutely, great example. That's why that stewardship piece is so critical. Great. Well, if you think of anything else that you'd like to share, you can feel free to chat. And Hannah and Shelley, let me know if I can't see the chat right now for some reason. So if there's something that pops up, just let me know. So I have a few different slides here. And the first one I wanted to share is how to start to build that relationship from the ground up. So someone had said that it's really hard to get off to the very first part of this, which is starting to build the relationship and get in the door at companies, right? So the first thing that you want to do is really begin with a relationship building model. Even if it's a cold call to the company, hey, like I want to grab coffee with you, or I'd love to just tell you more about our organization, and just have that great first conversation with them, share what you do, and then continuously follow up with them. So that follow up or that stewardship might look like, hey, I saw you guys in the news the other day, just because you strategically set a Google alert for that company. And then you said, hey, like I saw you in the news, like great job, you know, congratulations on this one thing, or hey, I heard this happen, I'm so sorry. And so just really just staying on top of what that company is doing or that person is doing to continue that stewardship. Or maybe you learned that they have a dog, like that's simple, like individual donors, right? I feel like companies are just like individuals sometimes, because you're working with individuals at those companies. So if you find out they have a dog or they have a family and you also have that connection with them, or maybe it's a separate connection, just make sure that you are using all of your knowledge and skills about that person, and connect with them more. That way they know that you care about them, you listen to what they had to say, and you're following up. So that really starts to build that trust up automatically. The next thing that you should try to do is invite them to an event. So thinking about an event to get to know your organization. So I'm sure most of you have some sort of touch point event throughout the year, whether it be like a benefit or whether it be a webinar now in, you know, the COVID days. But what activity can you invite them to that gets to share with them a little bit more about your organization? So for us at CFNC, we have preschools right here. And so we love to invite our potential prospects to just take a look at what we do, because we have really high quality education. You really get to see it when you're actually in the classroom and build that connection with the students. So what is your special sauce as an organization? No matter what it is, you definitely know you have it, and use that to share with stories, authentic stories with potential donors about what you do. And then finally, your organization values. So how does your organization or nonprofit align with the values of this organization? And you need to ask yourself the hard question of, is it a good fit? Sometimes it's not a good fit, and that's okay. And then you move on. But I think from the get-go and along this kind of relationship building to inviting folks to event to, you know, thinking about the values, you really just want to take a look at what are your organizational values, what are their organizational values, and how can you make sure that you align? Because there's also power in saying no. I think there's power in saying no to sponsorships. And I think that's where we're going as an industry as well. Any questions about that? Great. So some folks had some questions about strategy and how to do this. Here's some just examples of how do you decide what your strategy is as an organization. So here's a 4-quadrant approach to this. So the first thing I always like to do is say, if you're building a corporate strategy from the ground up too, what is your strategy, right? So ask yourself the question, make time for brainstorming, make time for setting up space for planning. So what can you as a nonprofit organization bring to the table and set the groundwork for your corporate outreach? What does your year ahead look like? And how will you pitch this to partners? So going into conversations at that relationship building level, building that strategy and saying, okay, well, I know that, you know, my organization is, you know, this year we just set our DEI vision. So we know that we're investing in racial equity this year. I want that to be part of why we're reaching out to specific companies, because we want them to invest in our work to build support for young people so they can succeed in life after preschool and get ready for kindergarten and also support their families. What is that special sauce and thing that your organization is doing this year that will attract corporate partners? What does your year look like ahead? So what's the timeline look like for you? What are those events? What's the calendar? How can you systematically approach companies and people and say, hey, this is the event we're having at the beginning of our year, the middle of the year, the end of our year. Save the date now and make sure that they all are aware and know that there are many opportunities to get involved. And then how will you pitch this to partners? So during COVID, is it on a Teams meeting? Is it a Zoom? Is it, are you vaccinated and can you have an individual coffee with folks? What does this look like? And it can look like many different ways. And maybe for your organization, it looks different from my organization. One of the things that I always like to do is go out to a coffee or a walk with folks and really just get to know them at the individual level first before making that pitch. That relationship building is so key to anything. And then after that, just get to figure out, how am I going to pitch this to them? Am I going to put together a slide deck? Am I going to put together a partnership packet for them? What does that look like? And be really thoughtful about engaging them in the way that they like to be engaged. The second thing that I think is really important is asset mapping. So as an organization, what tools do you need to create a map of your assets? And how do they intertwine with a company you're building a relationship with? So what's your value add as an organization to the community you're serving or working in partnership with? I'm trying to, myself, one of the things I'm trying to work on this year is moving more towards less of this more of the thought of being an accomplice and an ally versus going in and being the savior for the community that we serve, right? So how do you talk about that as an organization, and how are you making sure that the company also believes those same things you do? And one of the things I love about corporate partnerships is that you get the chance to go into companies and change the way that they think about things too. So there's almost this subversive power in nonprofits going into organizations at the corporate level and saying, hey, I really want to change, I wanted to end homelessness, or I want to make sure every student in Alexandria has access to free preschool. And then at the same time, I go in and say, and these are the root causes to this issue. And people, especially if they don't recognize that and realize it, it's really important for you to have that as part of your strategy, because that's your value add to the community, is that you can do that. And you have trust with the community as well. And so if a company is trying to get into that demographic, that group of people, you can say, oh, well, I have trust with that group of people. This is what you can do to work with them. Now make a donation to $10,000 for me. So what are, how can we mutually help each other and be in collaboration? Does anyone else have an example of asset mapping or figuring out a way to put, intertwine values together that's worked really well for them?
At the last nonprofit I worked at, we focused on STEM education in underserved schools. So we would target all of the big IT companies and biomedical companies within the region and get them to invest in our workforce development program, which would better not only their workforce, but create a pipeline for upskilling their current workforce.
I love that. That's brilliant. Yeah, exactly. So you used the things that you knew that you guys were great at doing. So that's the STEAM education, and then targeting companies that also believed in the same things. That's perfect. Another example, I was at an organization and we decided to create a new event because our clients who were experiencing homelessness were creating these beautiful beads and necklaces and artwork and all of these different really cool items. And we saw that it'd be great. And they always would ask us, is there a place we can sell this? So bringing this entrepreneurship model to them. So we decided to put a marketplace together for this group of people. And instead of saying these folks experience homelessness, we said, these are our new entrepreneurs and here's our program. And we were able to pitch that to JP Morgan Chase and got a first-time donation of $10,000 for them. We also pitched it to the US Chamber of Commerce for their entrepreneurship program and got $10,000 from them too. So you can really be innovative and think about from the needs, not just the assets that you have as an organization, but also what are the needs of your clients, and really thinking from the ground up of asking them first, what do they want and how can we help figure out what they need to, and then build that model. And it was really cool because then they made money that day also, which is awesome. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is just building your pipeline. So I think this is really hard to do, but I think it's really critical. So before you go into, after you define your strategy, after you do some asset mapping, you also want to build your pipeline of people you're going to prospect and ask for money. So who will you prospect? What events will you attend, even if it's virtually? So how are you going to connect with people that are in those industries? So if it's the STEAM education folks or different organizations that are connected to that, how will I get in front of them so they know who we are? Because especially for smaller nonprofits, my organization is really small. We're only 30 people. And I've worked at organizations where there's 8 people too. So that's really hard to do. So how are you going to use your time and make sure you get to events where you can make the most kind of bang for your buck, right? Like you want to spend your time in a way that will support your organization. So maybe it's if you're connected to the real estate industry, maybe you go to a real estate event. Maybe you go to a networking event for your Chamber of Commerce, your local Chamber of Commerce. I know we have a great Chamber of Commerce here in Alexandria. I'm sure you have a great one too in PG as well. And so what are those events that you really want to focus in on and go to? And then you talk about your nonprofit, you network your way into it. And I think that's like a really fun part of it as well. And then how will you engage new partners? So what, beyond just going to networking events, how are you going to make sure that you follow up with them too? So I went to an event one time where I knew I printed out the list of attendees. I knew who I wanted to try to meet at the event, and I found the person. I went up to them, I asked them for their business card, and then I followed up with them until they got back to me. So sometimes it is just that persistence that really makes it work. So that was that quote from the beginning of, you'll get a ton of no's until you get a yes. And so persistence works a lot. And then does anyone else have any examples of building your pipeline? Things that have worked for you? Cool. And then what I think also supports building the pipeline is creating a council. So whether it be a leadership council, a corporate council, it's your group of trusted advisors who you can lean on, especially in a small organization, and they help you build your pipeline. They help you build your strategy. They help you do asset mapping. They're the connectors for you. So they're your best group of people that you can find around you, and business leaders and folks who are connected to the community that can make those connections so you don't have to do all the work either. So you're really delegating out how you do this. And it builds champions. So this, I've always had councils of folks who whether it be a board of directors, an informal advisory council, a corporate council, and they've been so fantastic about being champions for our work. So even if I can't make it to an event, or in this year, a Zoom event, I have someone else attend in my place, and they can be the ones that connect you and make those asks as well. Because as we all know, sometimes those warmer asks, those are the ones that really finally get through. Although I think I'm hoping we're moving more towards a place where folks are more willing for cold call asks based on an organization's what they do for the community. I think that would be a great place to be. So hopefully we're moving more towards that now. But having a leadership council is fantastic. So if you haven't done it yet, I definitely suggest get a group of people together, create a packet, make it super formal, ask them. You can say something like, for our leadership council, we expect everyone to go to 5 events a year, or we expect you to help us raise $500 or $10,000 or whatever your monetary amount is, and they help you make those connections. Any questions about that? Cool. Awesome. So one of the things I always like to ask is, what have you done to build partnerships already? And if you want to just type this in the chat, and what has worked and what has failed. I'm a big believer in just being really honest about things that don't work, because you can always learn from your mistakes. So I'm going to take my screen off a second so I can look at the chat. and just think about it for a minute, and take time and say what has worked, and then just what hasn't worked at all. You can also take yourself off mute if you decide you want to share too. And again, the question is, what have you done to build partnerships? What has worked and what has failed?
For us, it seems to work when we provide a volunteer opportunity in tandem with philanthropic support. So support our organization with a check, and then we'll provide a volunteer opportunity for employees of your organization.
Great example.
And I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that. Do you have that, do you kind of set that up as you work with the potential partner, or do you kind of already have a list of like kind of a menu of options that you provide them?
Both. So we look at their priorities in terms of what they're interested in doing. And a lot of times the larger companies will state that volunteerism is a big part of their organizational values. And if that's stated, then when we make the ask, it's always in tandem with the financial donation. Other times it's kind of, we just feel it out and try to figure out what they'd be willing to do and what they'd be interested in doing.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And that's a, great example and a good part of remembering why that relationship building piece is so important, because then before something fails, you can kind of go to your main contact and say, hey, I have this idea. What do you think about this? And they'll help you figure out if that works for them, because then if it doesn't, they'll tell you and you can work on it together. So it almost becomes more of a partnership in terms of how you actually build up the event or build up the sponsorship or volunteer opportunity or whatever it might be. But you really do have that conversation. When I was building up a bigger ask for that company we made $100,000 from, it really was the question of what will it take for us to get to the next level of giving? And they were super honest about it. And that's how we were able to move them to the next level.
Jackie, let me ask you, we don't have a current leadership council, but I love the idea. How would you propose, or how in the past have you gotten started with that?
I would think about who your biggest corporate champion is, if you're just talking about corporate partners, and asking that person to be the chair of this council, and then talking to them about strategy. So, in the back of your mind, you want, maybe 10 people on your council, and being very clear about what priorities you have and kind of a matrix of support needs. So is it someone who's connected to the communications industry? Is it important to you to have a diverse group of people? Yes, I think is always the answer. But making sure that you have a group of people who are who really reflect the community that you live in too, from business leaders to community partners. And I do think having that voice of a community partner on the council is really important to help ground you too. And people love to be asked for that kind of stuff. So I feel like if you put together like a nice little packet, like, hey, here are some of the, like, this is like the job description basically of the council. Will you help support me? And then we'll list you on our website, or, you'll come with me to meetings, and, you'll get a button that says I'm part of the library system, like something like that. That just makes it a special opportunity too.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll go ahead and move on to the next example to help get your minds thinking about this a little bit more. So this is another idea of kind of asset mapping. At the organization I was at, me and my teammate worked on this. So this was first part of a larger presentation and pitch we had to an organization. And this was eventually moved to the full website. But what's your impact and so what would your partnership do for them? Or what would your partnership do for the community rather? And then your benefits, what would this mean for you as a company? So thinking about in this one example, what do we do as an organization? So we provide street outreach, healthy meals, housing provision, community partnerships, ending veteran homelessness. That's what we do. That's our value to the community, our value add. You know, in this specific example too, I think housing is so critical of an example, and education. You always have a monetary cost savings for taxpayer dollars as well. And that's a great opportunity for you to use the data that you have, no matter what organization you're in. You know, there's a lot of folks at different organizations, and kind of what is your value to taxpayers? And a lot of times that helps create the need even more for business owners. And then your benefits. So what would this mean for you? So corporate social responsibility. What is the model for this company? Engaging your employees, an event sponsorship, uniting employees, and then also storytelling and cause marketing. So thinking about how you can share out this business's story to the broader community. Are you going to make pitch a story to the news about it? Are they going to be part of your news article, or are you going to put them up for an award? Like what are those benefits to them that they can go back? Because really the representative from the company is almost like your fund. Like you have to convince them, and then they have to convince someone else on your behalf too. So a lot of times it's kind of this, unfortunately, two-person process. And so it's just as important for you to give them the information they need to be successful in their ask too. And that's the biggest thing I've heard from those, corporate partnership leads internally at companies, is that they want, like, how can they be successful in fundraising for you? Give them something that's easy for them to pass off to someone higher up at the company that makes the final decision. Or if it's the person who's higher up, just give them an easy reason to say yes. So this is kind of a partnership timeline in terms of first year, second year, third year, and fourth year. I thought that would be helpful for everyone to take a look at. Within the first year, you want to build the relationship. So things like volunteering. One of my favorite things to do over the summer, especially since folks are traveling or staying inside like we did last year, or taking some time off, right? You want to do listening tours, because you want to be known in your community as someone that listens to not only the community, but everyone else around you. So going through and setting up tours with all the companies, just saying, hey, this is not an ask. I just want to learn more about what you guys need right now. How's your business doing? How are your employees doing? And then we can tell you about how the community is doing and what we're doing to support the community. So it's a great opportunity for listening tours. And I would suggest doing those once a year. You also want to invite them to different events throughout the year too. So usually in the first year, you want to comp them for at least one event. So if you have a major gala and you think that they're going to be big sponsors eventually, just invite them just so they can get the sense of what your organization's like. And then you can cut them off if they don't donate to you the next year. And then also knowledge building events for team engagement. So is there an opportunity for you to get out in front of some of their team and teach them about the education system in your community? Or Janet, I think you said the 100 Black Women Coalition, is that right? So you can teach them about what you do for Black women in your community, and be that person that shares that knowledge with the organization. You're already providing a value add. So what are those first year engagements where you're building the relationship? And the second year, you really want to focus on making an ask based on the feedback from the organization. So combining volunteering, employee engagement, and monetary support. And most companies now like it if you make one ask for them all year. So at the beginning of your fiscal year, or maybe their fiscal year, know when all their fiscal years start too. So that way you can go to them and say, hey, this year I see us working together throughout the year, and here's the calendar of events. Here are the partnership opportunities. This is what we'll work on. And when you do that, you're super organized, and people know that this is the feedback that they gave you too, of like, hey, I want X, Y, and Z, and you give it to them, and then they can say yes easier. And then the third year, you just continue to build the partnership. And then at that point, you can start to tell the story and share successes. So how can you share their story more broadly? Is there a press release you want to put out? Do you want to do a newsletter about, do you want to start a corporate newsletter just for the companies you've engaged about how you, what good is happening in the community, and highlight them and focus on different leadership council members? I used to do these little video interviews with all of our leadership council members, and we would send it out to over 200, very small it seems, but it was a great group of a great list of people who all worked at companies. And so they liked to just get that very corporate specific newsletter about how we're engaging people in the corporate world, in ending homelessness. And then we would always highlight an organization and an individual. People loved that. It was fun. And then the fourth year, really honor the organization at an event by building media, by bringing media together, and because now you understand how you're connected. So maybe you have an event where you have honorees, and this is the opportunity for you to honor them, give them a speaking opportunity. You can also think about putting them up for an award for like a local chamber of commerce, or the US Chamber of Commerce if they're involved with that, or maybe just another local award with your community. Like there's always great things you can honor people for. So I hope that was helpful in kind of going through a timeline of how I usually see partnerships working out. And these, like I said, I'm very visual, so I always like to see kind of what happens when you do partner with people in these very transformational ways. You have people who make signs for events, and they get, that was a whole company all together that just got so excited, and they basically planned the whole event, and they did it every year, and it was super fun. It was called we had a picnic every year, and we invited all of our guests who had been recently housed. And so it was their one opportunity every year to get together. And it was really awesome. We provided everything from transportation to the food, whole community really pitched in, and it was great. What happens, I think just like the pictures that you share, the stories that you tell, coming into the classroom and supporting our young people, reading to them, right? Being those mentors. And then one of my favorite opportunities I had was with someone who I worked with, who was a corporate partner that turned into one of my really good friends, who then we both worked separately from both of our organizations and came together to have a fundraiser for the Legal Aid Justice Center. And so when you take a relationship building model first, it's just really beautiful, all the friendships you can make, really authentic work you can do. And then you find that you have similar values with people. And so then they can come together and support the community even more broadly. So there's just so much that can be built after that. And then my leadership council picture, we did a whole day of work on racial justice all together. And that was a really cool way to, talk about equality, equity, issues that were happening in our community and the business community, and being really vulnerable with each other too. I wanted to just share a quick example of what a partnership packet could look like. I'm also happy to just send this out to folks, but I always like to put together partnership packets in front of people, so that way they know, like, here is what you get from X, Y, and Z opportunity. This is just one page of it, but it's always helpful to have that so people can say yes or no more easily. Are there any questions about any of those like assets or partnership timeline? I wanted to make sure there was space to ask questions. No? Cool. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is just this alignment with equity. I just think I mean, this is critical right now. We know that this, unfortunately, we've had an issue with equity since we were started as a country 400 years ago, right? So we need to, and especially the nonprofit sector, I think really needs to step up and behind our community members and support all of those folks who have been doing the work for a very long time. So sometimes that means stepping up, stepping back, especially as a white woman in the education field. I feel like there are many of us. And how can I continuously lead and also make sure that we are making decisions that align with our racial equity vision, that align with the values that we want to set forward for our students. And that sometimes means maybe saying no to corporate partnerships, maybe saying yes to other types of partnerships. That means creating inclusive events. That means taking a look at our own internal practices and making sure that we're budgeting correctly, that we're paying people enough, that we're decreasing the racial wealth gap within our own internal team too. So what are these ways that we're really trying to step up as an organization, and myself as a leader committed to this? So I think that's really critical, especially right now. And also it's what companies should be trying to be better at anyways. So making sure that you have those alignment pieces together. I just wanted to, I was running a little short, but I just wanted to make sure that there is space and time for questions. I left my social media up on here, my phone number, my email address. So you can always feel free to call me, email me, look at what we're doing right now. We're a small but mighty organization. And I'm a first-time executive director. I actually just started right before COVID started. So my work before had been really in that corporate partnership model, and now it's really more broadly focused on our whole organization. So it's been a really cool transformation. Awesome. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, things you'd love to learn more about next time?
I would love to talk about more about saying no to partnerships. And I mean, I think as fundraisers, we've all been there, that someone offers you a partnership or a proposal that is not a match for your organization, yet you need the dollars, and your colleagues are seeing dollar signs, but you're seeing red flags. And how do you handle that? And, while I've seen it happen and I've suggested or recommended no, it's a hard thing to do.
It's really hard. I think it has to be a systemic approach as an organization. I don't think one individual can say yes or no. And that's where I think the biggest issues lie, is that organizations need to have gift policies and be on the same page organization-wide about who we receive money from and who we don't receive money from. So an easy question you can ask yourself is this company doing direct harm to the clients that I serve? And if the answer is yes, then you might need to take a significant look at what you're doing. And that's for me too. I think that we get money from a lot of different organizations. The other way you can look at it is it gets your foot in the door of these organizations that if you said no to the dollars, you wouldn't be able to get into. And then you could, like I said, try that relationship building piece and go in and do education opportunities and team building opportunities that really try to transform like parts of your brain, because when you volunteer, it like literally transforms your brain to think differently, which I think is really cool, like the science behind it, and connect with people in different ways. So you can think about it in a lot of different ways, but saying no is always hard. But if you have a organizational policy and gift policy around who you say yes and no to, it makes it a lot easier.
That's great. That's great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are this organization that you were talking about donating money, or is this unsolicited, or was somebody your organization was actually trying to partnership with?
Sorry, can you ask one more time? I'm a little confused.
Okay, Shelley just mentioned that she received some funding and she was trying to advise her organization not to maybe accept the funding. I was wondering, was that unsolicited funding from the business?
Oh, yeah, great question.
That is a good question, because I've seen it both ways. I've seen it unsolicited, or like your executive director or somebody on the board says, why don't we go for this proposal? And as you're turning it in, you're like,
Okay. Okay.
That's a really good point, though, of is it solicited or unsolicited? Because then you could make your policy, I'm guessing, around maybe you only accept solicited money and you have to do research around the other ones and make sure that there isn't a history of harm for your community or something like that. That's, I don't know if that's where you're going, but that's a really good idea. Any other thoughts, questions, things that might be helpful? Can you give more examples too? I also think there's a beauty in corporate partnerships that allows you to have bigger gifts. I think there's something to be said about having a diverse portfolio of gifts as an organization too. So the more you build up your corporate partnerships and your individual partners and your grassroots funding and your foundation funding and your government funding, just the more diverse of and stable of an organization that you have. So I'm a big fan of having that diverse portfolio. It's hard to do.
As a representative of the library system, I just want to thank you, Jackie, and thanks for everyone who's on today. And if there are ever ways that the library can partner with some of the groups you represent, I would be very interested. I was really impressed with the list on the chat. And so if there's ever an opportunity, let's talk, and I'll probably follow up with each one of you. And Jackie, if you don't mind, I just think your presentation was so spot on. I learned so much, and I have over 20 years of experience fundraising, and I learned from you today. So this is great. So I hope we can share this, share your slides, and I'm happy to send that out to the whole group.
Absolutely, yeah, I love to share.
Great.
I'd like to echo Shelley's thanks to you, Jackie. It was a wonderful presentation. I've learned a ton. I don't know as much as you and Shelley do about this because I'm a librarian by trade, but I thought it was really wonderful. I'd also like to encourage folks, I'm going to pop my email in the chat. If you have ideas about future programming you'd like to see the library system do that could help you and your organizations achieve your goals, learn more about grant-seeking nonprofit topics, I encourage you to reach out and let me know so we can take that into account when we plan.
I also just wanted to say there was one more thing in the chat that I thought was really powerful, which is that no can also mean the next opportunity. So thanks for putting that in there. I think that's a really good point as well.
Okay, well, if no one else has any other questions, I think that may be it. I wanted to thank all of you so much for joining us today. Really glad to see all of you. I think we'll be following up with you, as Shelley was saying. We'll look forward to hopefully seeing you next time.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Hannah.
Good to meet everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.